Been a bloody start to the week in the Western Cape. Several people shot dead and several others wounded in alleged gang and taxi-related violence across the Cape Flats. 2 people were shot dead in Philippi, while an alleged gang leader was killed right in front of the Mitchells Plain Magistrate's Court this afternoon. Let's get the view now. Former Western Cape Head of Police Detectives, Jeremy Vearey, who's joining us by phone. Jeremy, grateful for your time this evening. So for those of us who are watching on from a distance, put us in the picture in terms of where Philippi and Mitchells Plain fall in the broader conversation around gun violence and gangsterism in the Western Cape. I suspect we've lost Jeremy Vearey. We're going to try and bring him back. I want to see if are we able to do that fast enough, because, by the way, while we bring Jeremy back, there's been a big conversation going on in the Western Cape around the dozens of people who've been killed in recent months. Just in the last few weeks, more than 10 people were killed in shootings. The issue now has moved to where are the guns coming from? And now when you look at the history of gangsterism in the Western Cape, both the provincial government, the city of Cape Town and others have been left scratching their heads in terms of what exactly needs to happen now. You might recall just before the COVID-19 pandemic, there was even a deployment of the military, which was meant to bring down the levels of gangsterism. There was a lull at the time, but as soon as the military boots were removed from the ground, again, we went back to this pattern. So extreme are the levels of gang violence in the Western Cape that in some communities, even children now know or have had to be taught what to do in instances where there are shootings in their communities. Let's bring back the Western Cape former head of police detectives, Jeremy Vearey. Jeremy, we lost you there. We were reporting about shootings, one in Philippi, another in Mitchells Plain. In the Mitchells Plain case, a suspected or an alleged gang member was shot dead just outside the local magistrate's court. And I wanted to know, in terms of the broader picture around gang violence in the Western Cape, where does Mitchells Plain sit?
I think Mitchells Plain has established there is an area where there's a constant competition between 2 major gangs, the Fancy Boys in particular, who has grown significantly over the past few years and exploited the vacuum created by us locking up and being on trial of the 28 gang leaders who were in the Beacon Valley area. But these things of Beacon Valley, suburb of Mitchells Plain. But this type of gang war plays out all over Mitchells Plain, wherever either gang has a stronghold. And I think the shootings at the court is usually an opportune moment for gangsters to sort out, because, you know, once they bastion in their turf area, it takes a lot more effort to go targeted inside the turf area. So when they're outside of those areas, like at the court, it becomes a more opportune targeting opportunity.
Right. And given the history then of gangsterism in the Western Cape, you mentioned, for example, how gangs like the Fancy Boys might take advantage, if I may phrase it that way, of a vacuum when leaders or senior figures from the likes of the Numbers gangs are taken out of the picture. At the moment, what would be the objective of a gang like the Fancy Boys? Because this man who was killed outside court, we're hearing, was one of that gang's members, and that he and another man wounded in the same attack today had in fact just appeared in court on a murder charge.
Yes, I think just to stand here and stand, because people are looking at it only in terms of shooting. Gangs govern Mitchells Plain and the Cape Flats. In other words, we're dealing with a threat of criminal governance. There's no amount of visible policing that can stop it, and they are aware of it. And they are aware that even if you deploy 20 people now, they can wait it out and by tonight they'll kill other people. And if you want to see the clearest, you know, if you think example of a failure of visible policing in dealing with this historically, it's never worked. But then the police station is right next to the court. In actual fact, you walk from the court to the Mitchells Plain, you can walk through the same thing. So not even the physical presence of the police station there and police vans riding in and out past that in that road had stopped the shooting. So,
when you say, pardon me, Jeremy, when you say the gangs, for example, in an area like Mitchells Plain, run the community, how does that manifest itself? And what then are the implications for the many innocent people who live there, including children?
let's use an example of practically about a month ago. The police tried to act against the fancy boys in an area, part of Mitchell's Plain. When they arrived there to deploy there, they had to retreat. They had to retreat because the community, who are supporters of the fancy boys, actually engaged the police with hostile action. So that is the situation we're dealing with. We're not only dealing with needing to deal with criminal, and that's why I mean it's governance. So we're dealing with a situation where sections of the community gets used as a bulwarks against policing when we need to act in that particular, when there's action against the gangs there. So that's the first thing, and visible policing at the retreat, because like I said, they never regard it as a deterrent. Mm-hmm. So that is the one point. So the question, however, is how you deal with a threat of that nature. And to me, visible policing is not the solution, because it has historically over the past 100 years proved as a failure to deter organized crime and criminal governance by gangs on the Cape Flats. The only way solution is strengthening the only people who can put them in jail, and that is detectives.
Mm-hmm. And
it's not crime intelligence can help you, because they cannot investigate cases and take dockets to court. It's only detectives. So strengthening the understrength of the Mitchell's Plain detective component, for example, is a big factor in terms of the turnover of cases to court that can deal with these gangs, and deal with these gangs in a way that takes down their whole infrastructure. And the only legislation that can do that is the Provincial Organized Crime Act. So it's not a matter of investigating an individual murder here and there. We must take the whole composite on as a criminal enterprise and take them down like we do. But those cases from the past take us 2, 3, 4 years to do that, to get to court. And that long period often is because we can commit very few detectives to that amidst an already growing caseload of constantly cases coming in that we need to look at. So the issue is, the solution is strengthening the capacity. The other thing is dealing with where the gangs mobilize the community. We need to counter-mobilize against the gangs.
On that point, counter-mobilizing or working against gangsters, mobilizing the community against the police, for instance, you had said, in fact, right at the beginning of your response, that in a previous police operation, the cops had to retreat, right? Because the community had come out in support of the fancy boys. How does a gang that commits violent crimes get to a point where the very community affected by these crimes then acts as their shield when law enforcement is coming in for raids or perhaps to effect arrests?
Because they are organic community. They are not people who parachute from another planet onto the area. They are the sons, the daughters, the uncles, the thing. So if you're talking about the people you see on the front line defending them, it's their own relatives sometimes, and other members of the community whose rent they pay, whose electricity they pay, and who they supply with basic household goods.
So how do law enforcement authorities then begin to counter that?
Firstly, the community as co-conspirators who do that should be taken on under the Organized Crime Act 2 for their support of criminal enterprises like gangs. And the second thing is, it should be dealt with as a national security threat, as a threat to the governance of the state. Now, once you do that, you classify it in that way, you bring a lot of resources towards reversing that criminal governance. But the most important thing is from the community side. There are no counters, mobilization for neighborhood watches or wherever that dealt with that fancy boys community who supported them. And one of the problems with Mitchell's Plain is there's disunity and discord between neighborhood watches and CPF and the CPF and other organizations who struggle, and there's a lot of leadership struggles between people, and in that vacuum, the gangs are able to do what they do. So something needs to be done to show that those communities are developed into a united front, go onto the street and take back the streets, block by block, street side, and build structures that can replace and be a power bulwark against those. Now, these people can't do it on their own. That bravery at that time requires the police as an armed wing to support them in their street-level mobilization.
Jeremy Vearey, good to talk to you, former Western Cape head of police detectives. Good to have your time. It's a pity that line wasn't the clearest, but I hope we're all able to get a sense of Jeremy's thoughts on the gangsterism issue around the Cape.